Max Boot, who is not a friend of mine, who wears a fedora unironically in his main photos on Twitter and stuff, which just it's pretty stunning. And he's a surly fellow, and I think also increasingly an emotionally unwell fellow. But I can't prove that. I'm just basing it on my limited dealings with him and what I see on TV. But he wrote a column for the Washington Post, which also has just made a complete fool of itself in this Baghdadi process, in which he wrote, this is in a column, quote, "The assertion that Baghdadi died as a coward was, in any case, contradicted by the fact that rather than be captured, he blew himself up." End quote. So in a column in the third largest newspaper in the country, I think the Washington Post is the third largest deal. I don't know. It's close to it. Probably the second most esteemed liberal newspaper after the New York Times. But in a column that he had to know was going to be read by a fair amount of people, Max Boot, driven by his ferocious Trump hatred and obvious narcissism and hurt feelings at no longer being particularly important, not the way that he thought he used to be. He no longer has a political party around him that he feels he can direct, he has an important place in. There is a selfishness that has been exposed for many, not all, many never-Trumpers who have gone so far in their anti-Trumpism that they actively work to assist the other side. And now they can't hide from that anymore. And they also make fools of themselves. They can't hide from that either. Why would anyone think it appropriate, even for a moment, to suggest that Baghdadi suiciding himself and 3 of his own children with a suicide vest means that he's not a coward? Who would think that, first of all, and then who would write that out? Who would think that they should write it out and then submit it under their own name to a newspaper and not understand what the consequences of that would be? The buffoonery here from Boot is stunning, except you have to understand this is an emotional response for him, because anything that is good for Trump he feels like is bad for him. It's all personal. A lot of never-Trumpers, it's all personal. They're not important anymore. They got used to being important within a certain set of the American right. They got used to being celebrated and everyone listening to them and everybody. And then all of a sudden, when people started to question either some of their ideas or question their inability to see what many of the rest of us see about Trump, which is not that Trump is perfect. I don't think Trump is perfect at all. I think that Trump has made plenty of mistakes. I think he's got plenty of personality flaws that are pretty shocking at times. I don't sit here telling you that he's beyond reproach at all. In fact, I think it's important we should criticize Trump more on the, let's say, $1 trillion deficit we're running this year. On the, some of you write in and say, Buck, you can't criticize him on this, or he's trying to build a wall, or he's not trying hard enough. But that's a long way, criticizing somebody for not doing well enough. I mean, this is the difference between a coach who's trying to encourage his player on the field versus people in the stands who are saying, you stink, get out the game. That's what Never Trump became, really from the beginning. And then we find out not only are they yelling at Trump, you stink, get out of the game, but they were secretly rooting for the other side the whole time. Wow. I don't think we should listen to them anymore about game strategy if that's going to be their approach. Boot had to walk this back, by the way. But he's such a surly and smug fellow. We talked about immigration once when I was on Rising, and he just didn't know what he was talking about. He came on TV. He figures I've written some books that were well reviewed on the history of warfare, and therefore I know about immigration. And so he came on TV and said some stupid things like walls don't work, and everybody knows that. False. That's not true. Walls do work, and anybody who knows anything about the border knows the walls work. So there's that. He did have to add this little note to his piece. Quote, an earlier version of this column included a sentence questioning whether Trump was right to call Baghdadi a coward because he blew himself up. The line was removed because it unintentionally conveyed the impression that I considered Baghdadi courageous. Well, that is kind of what he said. When you say someone's not a coward, because they blew themselves up. I mean, kind of saying that they're not a coward. So I don't know what else to say about that other than Trump derangement syndrome is a powerful drug.